YouTube. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for stopping by. Got another video for you, going over some stocks, some potential swing trades, day trades, some new positions that I have personally got into, some additions to some swings that I'm already in. So yeah, let's just get right to it here. First, we are going to go over American Airline. This is not a stock that we've talked about before. So you're going to see a lot of stuff right here on this chart. You're going to see these green and red lines here, and then you're going to see this trend line. Those are going to be the main things that I'm going to be discussing today. First of all, this green line here and this red line here. I have marked these levels based on this big red candle, and then yesterday's candle, which is this one right here, formed an inside day. And we've talked about that in other videos before, where the candle, the price, open and close is inside of the previous day's candle. And you can clearly see that this candle is inside. It's smaller than this bigger candle here. It could fit inside of it. So therefore the inside day. Easy way to think about it. Now, whenever we see these types of candles, they often provide a nice move to the upside or the downside, one way or the other. And whenever the level that the bigger candle formed on the high side or the low side, whenever that level is broken, that's usually the direction that the stock is going to go. So right now, I am looking to see if and when the stock breaks the 1650 mark or the 1548 mark. If it breaks above the green line here at 1650, or it breaks below the red line at 1548, that's when we can look at calls for the green line or puts for the red line. And there's a couple of gaps on both sides that need to be filled. We've talked about gaps before in our other videos, and gaps between candles, like right here, you see this gap, and then you see this gap over here. The algorithms that control most of stock trading day to day, they fill these gaps one way or the other. They almost always, 99% of the time, fill them. So whenever the price breaks below this level here, we can probably expect it to come all the way down to 1505 at the very least, and it might even go lower. And then similar here, if we break above the green line, we can expect it to come up to the red line where the gap started, and then if it can break above that line, we can expect the gap to fill all the way to 1844. So what I'm looking at is a potential trend line forming right here with this dotted blue or purple line, just to kind of help give one more piece of information for me to confirm if the price is either going to be heading up or down. If the price touches this line and then continues down, we're probably looking at a bearish scenario. But if it can break over the blue line and come up to the green line here, then we might be looking at a bullish scenario. So just a stock that I'm currently watching pretty closely for the next several days to see what direction it decides to go. But that is one of the main ones that we're looking at. All right, next. We're going to go over to Enphase Energy. And this is a stock that, I'll zoom out on the weekly chart. This guy has just been beaten down. I mean, at one point it was trading at 339 back in 2022, 2023, and has come all the way down to 65. I mean, that's just crazy. But these levels down here are some pretty long-term levels that I've had marked off for a while. If the price ever came back down, as you can see way over here in 2020, this was a prior resistance zone where the price tried to break over the red line, never could, fell down, tried to break it again, couldn't hold it, fell down, and then it finally did break it, retested it successfully, and went on a nice big launch. So I told myself, keep an eye on it. If price ever got back down to these levels, it would be a great opportunity to buy for a long-term swing, and that's exactly what we did today. I started a new position on this. There's a couple of positive things going for it. One of them is, you see this blue line, this trend line here, and this line here formed a bear flag and it broke down. And we've talked about how most of these trend lines end up getting retested at some point, just like support and resistance levels get retested, which means that the price theoretically needs to come all the way back up here and touch this blue line at some point along the way. And it could take a little while. This is the weekly chart, so we could be looking at several months before it comes all the way back up here. But it is a highly likelihood of that happening. Another positive thing that we're looking at, this line that you see here, this white line that kind of goes all the way down here and doesn't really follow much, it's actually a very long-term moving average line, a 200-week moving average. And this kind of acts as a magnet a lot of time. When the price gets far away from it, it tends to pull it back closer. And these two lines, wherever the price is and then wherever this line is, they eventually converge and meet at some point, which would, if it continues down this path as the price raises up, it would fit quite nicely with retesting this bearish trend line here. Another positive thing in favor of going long on this stock is a positive bullish divergence happening. You can see the price here is higher than the price down here. But when we come look at the RSI, which is the relative strength indicator, we can see that relative strength indicator. That's what I call it. Stochastic is a big word that I don't like to say, that other people use, but that's my fun way of just, it's relative strength indicator on if the stock is moving poorly or if it's moving well. Whenever we see this line perform inversely of a stock price, it's usually a sign that the direction of the stock, whatever it's been moving, is going to be reversing soon. And just so you can kind of see it a little better, so if I draw a line here to here, you can see that it's a slight uptick versus a line here. And it's very clear, this is pointing down, this one's pointing slightly up. Usually that's a good sign for the stock to reverse and to come back up and find its mean or its average variance, so to speak. So in my opinion, this is a great stock to start a position on, and if we get a weekly close below 58.33, then we can cut bait and wait for price to find another support level, which we have marked around $37. So if we break that, we're probably heading down to that level, but for now, I think it's actually found a good support, and we are going to be heading way back up here sooner than later. All right, let's look at Apple. So Apple is looking quite nice on the daily chart here. Got a nice looking triangle, bullish triangle that is formed. It broke out, and we've got an inside day forming, which we just talked about. The price, the candle, this whole candle here from today could fit inside of this candle here, because the high and the low of today's candle was never as high or as low as yesterday's candle. Oftentimes that means this thing is going to be moving in one way or the other pretty soon. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw lines, and we're going to turn it green if it breaks to the upside, and then we're going to draw a line down here, and we're going to turn it red if it breaks to the downside. And that is as simple as it needs to be for right now. We'll see how things play out tomorrow. But some other positive things, looking at it, the EMA lines that we've talked about before, the price and candle is above all of those EMA lines, which is great. This orange EMA line that you see right here, you can see how it's crossed over these two lines. That's often a very good sign as well, a bullish signal. Whenever the higher time frame EMAs get crossed by the shorter time frame EMAs, it usually means on a shorter time frame that things are going to move in a positive direction for us. So this is going to be another good one to either get shares and hold if we break above the 245.70 mark. Or you could look at puts, and maybe the candle comes down here and retests this line. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw a candle that touched down here and then it bounced to kind of fake out a bunch of people by breaking below this level. But we'll see what happens. For now, I think overall probably a bullish pattern and price structure playing out. These green bullish candles are always nice to see. It might consolidate for a few days in this range before it decides a direction too, but another one that we're going to keep an eye on. Keep watching for now. All right, let's go over to coin here. So coin is just kind of chopping around right now within a bull flag that's been forming, which is quite nice to see. This is really, for me personally, hands off, not going to touch it unless it breaks above to the upside here, or it could possibly come chop all the way down here. There's a gap to fill right here at 198, and it could theoretically come back down here, bounce, 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 and then take off. Wouldn't surprise me if it did that at all. But we'll see. For now, a bullish structure, and it kind of fits inside of a big cup and handle pattern that has already formed. And now it's currently retesting and holding a pretty important level around the 264, 265 price range, which is going to be pretty important. It needs to hold and close above this level this week to see any more upside next week. But if the price and candle ends up closing down here at some level, we're probably headed more down, in my opinion. For now, cautiously optimistic. Long term, this is looking like a great chart where, at the very least, I mean, I don't see why or how we don't come touch all-time highs, way back when the stock first IPO'd at 429. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. All right, let's check out Macy's. This is going to be another one that we're looking at, a possible swing trade and day trade. So let's go to the weekly chart, and we got our levels, this green and red level from the inside candle from the week prior. So this was a weekly inside candle. Same concept though, price could fit inside. And on the daily chart, we had this blue dotted trend line that you can see here. It looks like the price has tried to break out and retest touching the blue line, which is a great sign, and now it's headed back up. And if we get a daily candle close above 1540, then this has plenty of room to run up to 16, maybe even 17. Technically, it could go all the way up to the 1813 and touch this higher level up here, but might take a little bit. 16 and maybe 1650 is more likely before it decides to consolidate or reverse direction. But a great swing trade in my opinion. I've got a close watch on this one on the smaller time frames. If the price can break above the 1540, I'll be looking at calls, and if it breaks below the red, then it's got quite a bit of downside to go, 1365 at the very least, but it could drop quite a bit down to $10. $12 is the first support if it loses the 1360 mark here. So could pay quite nicely either way. Something to definitely keep close watch on, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I will do an updated video if I get into any positions that I've talked about so far and that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. Definitely want to update things and kind of prove one way or the other if I was right or wrong. And hey, if you're watching still, hit the subscribe button. That's how you can support me. If you're getting any value out of this, that's all I ask of you. Just hit the like and subscribe button. Awesome. Thank you. All right, now let's go look at Ford. Another one that might provide a pretty interesting small swing trade. It's got a gap to fill right here at 964, 965, and it looks like it might be trying to get back inside of a bigger trend line that we had marked off before on the weekly time frame. So if, try to make it a little easier to see, if over the next day or two we can get a candle close above the 930-ish area, then might be a good time, not 930, the high of the candle was 935, so that's probably where we need to break 935, and then filling this gap all the way up to 965 should be a guarantee. So could do calls, or you could do shares. Since it's a cheaper stock, you could load up on shares and swing that small price there. Options might pay a little better though, but overall looking like it might be a nice move coming up here, and you can see some more positive divergence happening with this trend line and then the RSI that we've talked about. You can see this one's pointing down, this one's pointing up. That means buyers are stepping in when the price gets down this low, and they're showing interest in the stock at this price, which is usually a good sign. So we'll see how this plays out. Another great opportunity for a potential swing trade that I've got good eyes on, and I'll be watching over the next day or two. All right, let's check out UPS. Another really good looking potential swing trade forming here. We've got a potential symmetrical triangle forming, which is quite nice. And usually this pattern where you can see, so this blue line here and then this horizontal line, you can see how it forms a triangle. Usually if it breaks out big, and there is a giant gap all the way up here that needs to be filled from its last earnings report. And a lot of times these earnings gaps get filled at some point. All the way to the very least, it's going to fill it halfway, potentially. There's another small gap right here that you can see, and then a small gap right here. So those are going to act as magnets almost if the price can break above this blue line. So let's just mark some levels here just in case, and let's see what happens. If we break above this blue line, we're going to turn it green. I'll look at calls, and I will plan on writing them all the way up here. This would be the first stopping point, this 120 level. Wherever the bottom of these candles are, it's a potential for the price to stall at one of those areas. It's not a huge resistance level, so nothing to worry about too much, but just something to keep an eye on if this is a swing that we're going to get into. So yeah, for now, it could, for the next day or two, still chop around in this triangle before it decides a direction. And if it breaks down below this blue diagonal line, then I would fully expect, if it's not a fake out, for it to just fall all the way back down to the 107, 108 mark. So yeah, keep an eye on it. For now, I did start a position with this one with shares. I have not done options yet, and it's this very small starter position on this. We'll see how things go over the next several days here. All right, do a little update on Hormel. Hormel had an inside day that broke to the downside, and this is a good example where you can kind of see the levels and how it plays out. So the red line here, it broke to the downside once the price broke under, and you can see it tried to reclaim it with this candle here, and see how the candle wick touched it and then came back down. That's usually a sign that further downside is going to happen, which it did. It came all the way down to 28, and then it formed a hammer candle today. We've talked about hammer candles in the past and what they could potentially mean in the short term. And it would not be surprising if this trend line here got retested at some point, which would mean it would come up and touch to the underside here, potentially. But there's also a level at 2750 down here that could get filled. I'm not in a position right now. I won't be starting a new position on this one. Short term, it looks like it might be getting ready to actually reverse back to the upside, but there's not a ton of potential upside with this one. It's a great dividend stock if you're a fan of those, but options aren't really high volume on this one. But it's a good one to potentially do covered calls or cash secured puts because it moves pretty slowly and the levels for this stock are pretty easy to identify. You could look at covered calls or cash secured puts on this stock. For me, though, I'm not going to be interested in doing anything with it while it's in this range. I want to see it either break down completely under 2750 or break back above the 29-28 mark before I did anything with this stock personally. But just something to keep an eye on right now is the direction that it could go, which if we zoom out on the monthly chart, you can see there's a big trend line where it's tried to break out. And if it can break out above it at some point in the next several weeks, then it could be a good swing trade with lots of room to the upside, at least 5 or 10 full dollars on the share price, which could be really good for options or even just swinging shares. So keeping an eye on that one. All right, let's go check out Roku. We've done videos on Roku before, and it's nice to revisit and see how things have played out. I told people we did a video on Roku back when price was down here at 78, and this orange line you see here, this falling wedge, we had talked about it and how the price had broken out and how it was probably going to come back and retest it, and it did it perfectly, and then it just started taking off. Had a good earnings, shot up, had a big gap here, and yeah, I mean, this was a great swing trade for anybody. I made great money off of it. If you watch my videos, you potentially made some good money off of it, and now it's setting up to potentially give us another great entry and swing trade. This green line that you see here was a pretty big resistance level, and it tried to break out right here, couldn't do it. Then the earnings that happened, and it was really good, launched it, and it made a big gap. And what have we said about gaps? They get filled. Well, this gap just happens to line up perfectly with this green line, which was a former resistance line. And if this gap comes down and gets filled, and the candle can hold this level as a support, and it can flip from a resistance to a support level, then way more upside in the long term is probably likely. At the very least, our price here at 120, 122 is almost inevitable. We've talked about this 200-week moving average here. They are going to touch at some point. It might be closer to the 110, 115 mark. Either way, still plenty of more upside for this stock once the gap gets filled to the downside. I'm not entering a new position until this gap gets filled, and then I'll look at getting into a new position. All right, and now our last ticker that we're going to talk about today, Moderna. So I started a position on Moderna back when it was in the 42 price range. That was a level I had marked off from a long-term investment perspective. And this is another one of those stocks, just like Enphase, where, I mean, it was trading at almost 500 at one point, and it's at 35. It's just crazy. This is a strong company. The negative publicity and everything has just, it's beaten it down far more than I think it deserves, than it's worth. And even the stocks, just the fundamentals, technical analysis, everything is showing upside, in my opinion, for this stock. These levels down here are some very big levels from way back when the stock price was first a thing, we'll say. Which is why we have them marked off. And I told myself, just like with Enphase, if this stock ever came back down to these levels, I would buy it for a long-term hold. And that's what I've done. I have got a pretty good position with Moderna now, and as long as it is in between 30 and 37 bucks, I will probably look at ways to get more if I can. But for now, there's just, you see this blue trend line pointing down. We'll just show it again, and you start to see these patterns form. Positive RSI divergence. This stock is going up. It's gonna. I don't see how it can't. The 200-week moving average is all the way up here at 78. Well, 78 and 35, even if we meet in the middle, we're at 55. I mean, like, what? How do you not like this stock? It's just a great long-term investment, in my opinion, for a swing trade. Not something that's going to happen overnight. So one of those, just buy the stock and let it sit there and do its job, and check on it every week or every month and see how it's going. But just it's gonna, I think it's gonna double in price at the very least, in my opinion. So if you've made it this far, you're awesome. You're a trooper. I appreciate you supporting me, just watching the video. It's really helpful. Again, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and that's all I ask of you. That's just the best way you can support me. I hope you're getting some value out of this from all of my videos. Hopefully it's teaching you something or helping you just identify some potential stock swings or investments that you could be doing. I'm not a financial advisor. None of this is financial advice. But hey, if you can make some money based off of my ideas, then we both win. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned and be on the lookout for the next video. Boom.